And Mark Kersner is the co-founder and president from Elephant Scale. Elephant Scale has been partnering with Protec Training for a number of years now. And you can see Mark's bio there. I won't read the whole thing for you, but know that Mark has pretty much been on the cutting edge of all things technology for over 2 decades. You can take a look there, and I will follow up at the end of the presentation with any questions that you might have that we can get Mark to answer for you and tell you a little bit about Protec Training at that time. So at this time, I will go ahead and hand over control to Mark to give you a little bit of insight on the Internet of Things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. Here is the first slide. We're good to go. So everybody, thank you very much for registering, for coming, and keep in mind that you can ask your questions anytime. I may be able to see them, but I will not answer them. I will answer them at the very end, which is about 30 minutes from now. So please react, please ask your questions as they come up. That way I know what interests you, but please do not expect the answers right away. So with that, let me start. The plan is to show you the introduction to IoT, which I believe is quite unique, and you will see why I can say so, that it is quite unique. So with that, let us just start. Here is the inspiration to our approach to IoT. IoT, of course, stands for the Internet of Things, and I'm sure that you've been watching the hype, and that's considered one of the probably 3 most promising areas. The other 2 being machine learning and probably blockchain. But they are all related. So here's the inspiration. For a while, I was watching what people do in the area of IoT, and I mostly saw that they were just looking at specific technologies that they imagined that would be part of IoT, which is okay, that's the right approach. That's what you need to learn. But that is not how you succeed in IoT. And then one day I chanced upon this book and an email by Maciej Kranz, that's how you pronounce the name, who is one of the vice presidents at Cisco and who is a leading practitioner and theoretician of IoT. And I was amazed by how I believe exactly right he takes the approach of teaching people first on a very high level. Don't go to those technologies that are of interest only to the implementers. Let's talk about what IoT can do for you. So we became cooperators, colleagues, and good friends. And together we were able to come up with a plan of how to teach and promote this IoT. So this is the approach. That number one, the worst thing that you want, probably one of the worst things, is that somebody hacks your camera, the one that you are usually using in your computer, and then just watches what you do. So that's very common. Not only that, but lots of kinds of hacks are very common, especially in IoT, just because it's a wild land right now. So his approach is security first. The very first thing you want to discuss, and not the very last thing, as programmers usually do, is security. Once you have started on the right foundation, you can go and say, well, the first thing that I really need to implement will be the vision. What do I want to accomplish? And therefore, I need to talk to the managers. I need to explain to them what that is, what's the potential, which projects do we want to take on. After we got the management and we got the vision and the company understanding, then we need to say a very interesting thing. 50% of all of the data science projects this year will fail. That is the statistics. They will fail to maybe not be able to achieve the result, not be able to give you the right return of an investment. So by contrast, the IoT projects are kind of fail-safe. The statistics says that they achieve 95% rate. Well, that's very nice. And so we will need to add to that. We'll have to say that we have a great chance to succeed, but we need to plan for that. We need to choose areas that will give us return on investment. After all, we're running a business and not so much a self-improvement spiritual organization. So we need to choose some areas that will make sure that our business is sustainable. Here is what the wrong approach would be. If you put that first, that's one of the searches that you get, but you can search on your own and you'll find out that people say, well, IoT is these technologies. And then they will list those technologies and they will tell you that is what will constitute IoT. So sorry to say, guys, that's the last, not the first step. The very first step would be this. Let's look at the market. What is the size of the market? What areas can I approach? What are the numbers? So here we have some examples, and the total size of the market, some people estimate it at $15 trillion in the coming, I believe, 10 years. So in the maybe already by 2025, and that is the major areas. Some of them we already see, like vehicles and the smartwatches. That's all already there. Part of my personal story is that my son, who works as a hacker for KPMG, he hacks those cars, and that is the right approach. But beyond that, we see that we all heard about smart cities. We heard about retail getting and smarter. So these are the markets. These are the first areas that you would want to approach. The next question is, how do I do this? So this is what you do. You look for what is the very first step that will make sure I get guaranteed success. What operations are out there that are especially prone to be benefiting from IoT? Here they are. Anytime that you have connected operations, for example, you have lots of devices, sensors, and meters. Obviously, that is the classical definition of IoT itself. That's all of those devices that are on the internet. So the old joke is that your toaster talks to your place where you measure your weight and says, you know, he's been eating a lot, so don't show that. That is more of a joke, but there is a lot of truth to that too. So the devices talk to each other, they're all connected. The next step is in the industry. There are lots of remote operations. For example, you want to monitor and control your production. I'll give you examples of that later on. That's the mechanical part. That's the automation that begs to be done. The next one is predictive analytics. Based on these measurements, I can now go ahead and find out what will be in the future. The famous examples, what should I fix before it breaks? And the way to do this would be through this. I'm sorry, I think I show the one notifications as well. Okay, that would be something that I can predict that may require attention, and therefore I'll be much better off if I fix that things now. That amounts to preventive maintenance. Okay. Now, go to the next slide. How practically are you going to do this? So here's one example. That's just one of the examples that evaluates where you stand right now. By answering certain questionnaires, you can say, here are my operations that I particularly have in my enterprise. You might be a bank. You might not care about connected operations at all, or remote operations, or you might be a production plant and you might care. So here you will figure out what applies to me, which are the most promising areas that I can deal with. This will go into an evaluation. Let's say you fill out these forms, then what comes back is that's your level. That's where you are right now, and therefore that is what you will need to pay attention to in the future. If you look at these forms, 0 to 6 seems to encourage you that you are not quite there yet, but they just do it in a very nice and polite form that you miss some of the answers, and then on and on. So all that is part of the way that I think, and that my colleagues also think you should approach the implementation of IoT, by giving people the high-level vision first, giving them the action items, how to evaluate what's next, and providing them with advice based on that. So all over, the way we teach this is very unusual. This is not a technology workshop where we just say, here's the theory, here are the labs, please do them. Rather, we divide people into teams. We suggest that they think of how will they change their organization given this new potential of IoT. And often they work together in the groups, and practically that is a lot of fun. People really love getting into teams, teams compete with each other, and what comes out is then the much better understanding of how you work together, what the potential of this IoT is, what you should approach, and that's a practice for later on implementing this. And that is what we provide. So as you can see, I don't think you've ever or often has been to such kind of a workshop, because IoT is very big. It has tremendous potential. You need to approach it from the top down. Later on, I'll show you the bottom level as well. We teach these technologies. It's just that they should not obscure the big picture. So now that you've started, you will have to answer these questions. Do I have the skills that are needed for the IoT projects, or does my team have them? If they do not, how do I go about this? What are the skills that I need to introduce into my organization? The very next question will be security. Do we have enough understanding and grounding in security? Will whatever we build, which doesn't exist as yet, and it shouldn't at this point, we should think security first. Will we be able to think security first? Do we know the ABC of security? Look into any of the big company projects. You will see that these guys seem to have read the very first page of let's say network security, but not the second one. Very often these big data projects are hacked by just going to the second page of how you really implement security. So the grounding in security is very important. Next one is practical questions. Will I be able to form these teams? How do I recruit? And so on. So once we get there, we'll show you, and this is what you'll need on the bottom. This will be the technologies that you will use to implement this. So of course, later on, once you know the big picture, then you will say, and now I'll need the technology, I need the implementers. That to me really is the easiest part, because people have been implementing technology solutions for years. That's not a problem, and that's just one of the examples you could use to provide the good foundation. So with that, with all of that in place, now you're saying, well, what can I learn from other people? What have they done that perhaps did or did not succeed? So you look at if they had problems with any of the implementations, what were the key obstacles? And to begin with, many people are not aware of privacy. Look at that regulation that came out in Europe just a few days ago. All such things change significantly your implementation, so it's much better to think of them before. Are there standards in this area? Do I need to talk to other systems? Again, security first. Is my team knowledgeable enough? And then finally, I'm going to change my organization. I'm going to introduce a very significant change. So how will that happen? Will I be able to explain it succinctly to the team members, to the management? So here are the big pictures, big picture items. And then here is the recipe, because the whole thing is not to warn you, oh, there are dragons. It's to give you a good recipe on how to overcome the problems. So here is the kind of recipe for success. And it tells you point by point exactly how you should go about. First, let's think of building an ecosystem. We will need partners. Let's say we're automating the garage. Well, who will provide the sensors? Who will be doing the billing? All of that requires other people that are not our core competency. Perhaps if we're organizing a garage store, a garage company, that is our competency. So then we'll talk about which technologies, how do we start with the first simple proof of concept, but effective, something that will already bring money. And that's a short summary of what we would have to look at. So the next step is, let's look who else has done it. The interesting place to look is Barcelona. It's a nice place to visit anyway, but they have succeeded in being probably the most advanced smart city. They run their forums there, they run their conferences, so that's what they have done. The traffic management, waste management, all of that is on the IoT level. They measure and then they react. The street lighting, that's the famous easy application, because that LED street light today is a small computer with the camera. It can do a lot of things for you. So you can look at how did they do smart parking, how did they do public transportation and security. You will see that there are quite a lot of interesting achievements out there in the world. Next step is, well, let's go down a little bit, down below level. An example, I want to make my business smart. So how do I go about this? Let's look at the example of not so smart business. Let's say we're talking about car leasing. And you see that I'm jumping between very many multiple verticals just to illustrate that point, that it's applicable everywhere, it's here, it's happening. And here are many examples. So let us say you're doing a car leasing. So there are many actors in car leasing. There's the car manufacturer and the dealer. They are not the same. They have to be different, and practically they are different. Then there's the leasing company, the people, and so on. And every one of them has their own ledger. They all store the inventory. The manufacturer knows their cars, but the dealer also knows their cars. Well, the problem is that that's multiple ledgers. So what one knows is not necessarily what the other knows. When they don't have a perfect synchronization, they might run into some conflict. So the very first step here is one potential interesting technology that will allow you to do it smarter. That's blockchain. You perhaps heard about blockchain, and you maybe heard all kinds of rumors, because blockchain is connected to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes up and down. I believe it is at 8,000 right now. It was at 16,000 just a couple of months ago. So many people maybe were getting bad rap. But blockchain is the technology behind which many people believe is more important than the money aspect. And here's an example of what you can do and what a lot of people are doing today. Put it all into one ledger. Make it a smart ledger, make it a permissioned ledger, make it a ledger that can act so that it wakes up and implements your contracts. But here's one great solution. One more example, just out of line here a little bit. There is the first country that has already held an election, a democratic election, using blockchain that happened just a week ago. That's the country of Sierra Leone. So regardless of the rumors, but it's moving ahead. So that would be the very first step, and IoT works very well with blockchain. But let's go on. What exactly IoT will give us? So let's look at from the bottom to the top. The bottom is where we have relationships, we have local manufacturing, we have a lot of manual labor. Going up, that's what already happened, the digital era. Things are automated, things are fast, things are efficient, they are much more correct than they used to be. And then level 3, jump one level up. That is your IoT. Now your cars can talk to each other. The cars are very often autonomous. They are self-driving. That is already here. And then these cars begin talking to the dispatchers, and this is where IoT comes up. So of course, going into such transformation from the bottom to the top is not an easy task, but also of course it's clear that it is promising. One thing is clear, is that you will get probably even more efficiency in step 3 than you got in step 2. So the difference between 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 is enormous, and also it's happening much faster. So what exactly do you need to watch for? What will your plan of attack look like? Here's what it is. You would probably start with a strategy. Of course, you will have a meeting where all of the key players will be in, and hopefully it will not last that long, but it will come out with a plan. Here's my plan. That's what I'm preparing for. I'll have enough upper level management there in this meeting so that they will understand we're entering this new era. It's not just once we are going to change the way we run. If so, you'll need a team. You'll need a diverse team with multiple members, maybe a lawyer included too. And then you will rethink all of your operations. Is there anything where I can go and do it more efficiently, faster, and cheaper? I'll give you practical examples in a while just to learn from. That's the whole purpose of that workshop that I'm describing, is that is how you rethink, and that's how you try to discover areas where you would get the most bang for the buck. Then you'll have to educate your people and train them in what are the good implementation practices, how to look for the best possible outcome, how to get the lowest hanging fruit and go higher and higher. And of course, that has to be updated once in a while. You cannot set your course straight and never correct it. Here are some examples of what people have already done. Here's this company called Corp. They have, well, they dig for gold. So they have more than 1,000 miners, but they really wanted safe, productive. So they have automated with all of the centers now, the sensors. They have the real-time visibility into the mining operation. They have monitoring. They have ventilation control, extremely important. Sounds like a minor item for people who just live in Texas like I do, but much more major for people whose lives depend upon this. What did they achieve? They got, first of all, practical result in savings, the costs of energy. They have much better tracking of what's going on, much safer, much better, and all of that is going in real time. So that's one example. But let's look more generally at different industries. For example, transportation. Of course, GPS and the location of your truck now from there, which is already here, you go into, I know where my vehicles are, and I know this in my computer system. We know that Uber and Lyft, they all will go eventually into transportation and logistics. They only started with the human delivery now, then it is food delivery, and then they don't hide it that there will be also transportation revolution. Well, many companies, they have their own transportation layers. They can add that. What's the result? You get reduced cost, you get safe operation, you get better efficiency and better delivery. Another example is oil and gas. People have been thinking about this application right from the beginning. They face their own unique challenges. One of them is that the internet is not perfect, far away from the shore and on the oil rig. And the solution here is that you build systems that understand that internet is not perfect, and they do not rely on complete connectivity all the time. That's very similar to our phones and our mobile devices. They have this mode, which is built in, that understands that you store things in your local databases and then you connect that to the internet when you have. So these are technical problems that are unique to each area, but they have been solved. There are solutions. Big level solutions, for example, Amazon has specific technology layer for just that. It's just one example. So once you implement this, what your results are, of course, is safety. One of the specific problems in oil and gas is that the baby boomers who are currently retiring, and they were the leading people implementing all of that production, well, they're retiring and taking away their knowledge with them. So right now it's a big movement to keep that knowledge, automate it, put it in. So instead of this gut feel for, oh, my rig will blow up, you get the automated and precise notification which will be improved with age and instead of retire. Another example, smart cities, people all talk about this. The IoT solutions for this are sometimes already productized. You can just buy it, implement it in your city. The results usually are in the 20-30% range. You reduce your cost, perhaps by 30% or so. You increase the revenue, So that's a movement that's already started. You know that it's going on. That's another area that is ripe for companies to go in. There are lots of startups that are doing this. So one example, Pepsi company, they had lots of problems with their plants. You know that that Pepsi Cola that people enjoy that needs to be bottled somehow. There are definitely plants, and it's not always perfectly efficient. Don't break it until don't fix it until it breaks. Well, that's not the approach because it does break eventually, and therefore they have implemented this unified IoT solution that watches over the plants. You do not poll that, instead it talks to you, and then you have a unified support system. So finally you get much better mechanism, improved reliability, reduced downtime and so on. Now let's look at what will come back once we are there. We are on the road, we had our plan, we're implementing. This is what we will get. We'll get connected operations and all of the results of that. So people have already been talking about networking and cloud computing. The new terms are fog computing, that is computing on the very end of the network, right next to the sensor. Blockchain and other technologies that are hopefully useful for that kind of implementation because they are also distributed, they are with security in mind, and so that will be the first easy result. The next ones will come. You'll get remote operations and enablement. You will be able to implement more of the predictive analytics. And now going down, that's higher and higher levels. So you can read that, keeping all the way to the bottom, you will come to the level of smart level environments, and cities are just one example, but smart factories, smart campuses, and so on. So this will be the outcomes, the payback of the IoT implementations. Now, as I mentioned, with that approach, we have created what we call a workshop where people first approach that level of Internet of Things, beginning to think of what is it for me? And that requires this special new thinking, and then implementing, of course, it's not a given, but it is something that people have been doing much more, so they know. That is all that I really wanted to tell you today. So what I want to do now is go to the meeting and see if there are any questions that I can possibly answer. Now, for that, I have to apologize that I need to find out where those questions are.
Okay. Mark, it doesn't look like this is Kelly, we don't have any questions, but I will go ahead into the attendees and see if I can, if anybody has any questions, they can ask them.
Okay. Now. All right. Yeah, I'm also looking at the questions, guys. No questions so far. If you already asked a question and it went nowhere, then just check that you have the chat enabled and you can talk.
Right.
Talk in the sense.
What I will do is we'll give folks another any questions they might have. I will go ahead and let everyone know. Let me just grab the presenter here. Just let everyone know a little bit about Protec. We're a global enterprise IT and business skills training and consulting firm. We have offices all over the world, training all over the world. We've operated for almost 30 years to many of the Fortune 500 companies, as well as some of the top 10 U.S. companies. Anything from programmers to system administrators, analysts to project managers, courses literally from A to Z for anyone working in the IT field. So anything from the most cutting edge technology like Internet of Things, what we spoke about today, to a lot of the mainframe courses that are certainly still relevant for a number of industries. We maintain a network of technology partnerships like the one we have with Elephant Scale, including CA Technologies, Microsoft, Citrix, you can see them there, IBM, Cisco, as well as courses in the technology around Java and Linux. And the Leading the Internet of Things, Building Your Internet of Things course from Mark is available on our website, as well as over 1,000 different courses, and we're adding new ones every day across a multitude of different technologies that you can see there. So I invite you to visit our website and take a look at some of the courses that we have available. In addition to the Internet of Things course, we have a number of different courses available from Mark and Elephant Scale, so I invite you to take a look at our website. It looks like we did get a question. We have one that is asking about the workshop. Would you have any dates available within this year? I am not sure if we are listing any dates on the Protec website for this course, but if you are interested in some potential dates, I can follow up with you after, or have someone on my team follow up with you and Mark and see about some dates. I think that was the only question that we had, so I appreciate everyone's time. We will make the slides and this presentation available to all participants in the next day or so. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to visit our website or email us. I will be following up again, like I said, with the slides and how you can access the presentation.
Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt if I could. I apologize for that, but Tim Noka here, gang, and for the purposes of right now, just coming to make sure that, Kelly, you did miss a couple of questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and give you one, Mark. Can you explain more the relationship between blockchain and IoT? Sorry, we do have you, right, Mark? All right, try now.
Okay, yeah. Now you do. Try
Okay.
that. Yes, that is a great question, because both are very hot technologies, and immediately people think, well, is there a connection? The answer is that yes, and here's how it works together. IoT implies that there are many sensors all around, they're all distributed, and blockchain implies that there is a copy of that same database in many places. It is also distributed. IoT also wants security, and blockchain gives you security. So naturally, you might think, can I do this implementation on blockchain used as a storage medium together with the sensors? And the answer is yes. There are lots of them. In our workshop, we mentioned exactly how they come together, but the basic idea is that two distributed applications naturally want to work together. You look at blockchain as the storage, and you look at the IoT as the computation and the implementation of that.
All right, good, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and keep going, I guess, until Kelly tells me to stop. Someone says, I run an executive search firm. What types of high demand positions do you think IoT companies will be looking for?
That also is a great question. Well, the workshop obviously is for people who are already in the company and they want to introduce this IoT revolution. But I will not be surprised if the companies will find that they would rather prefer somebody who has been there, done that, and he has done some kind of IoT revolution in another place, and now they want him to be the catalyst and to start. So one of them is an IoT practitioner on the managerial level. The other one is data analysts who specializes in IoT and implementing developers who are in IoT. For that, probably they will not advertise it as the IoT developer, but rather as a big data developer. But that is exactly who will be then implementing. So these are the three areas that I think are there. It may make sense to just give Kelly a call and see if she can suggest anything, because we often work with the recruiting firms, either training their people so that they can implement this, or training the internal teams.
Okay, this is Kelly. I was able to get my questions to populate, so I apologize for that. Another question, do you know any IoT solution for forest fire detection?
For that, I would have to ask my good friend Maciej Kranz, because he's just the central repository of it. And if it exists in the world, then he will tell me right away. So again, if you write to Kelly with that question, I will get back with the answer.
I tell you what I do. What I will do is I will do one that forward all of these questions to you, Mark, and we'll make sure that we get very succinct answers for everyone who asks them.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do this, because these are wonderful. They are all wonderful, very challenging questions. But I have the resources to either answer or find the answer.
With that, I'll give you the last question that we have here. It says,
okay.
Can you please explain a bit about cognitive learning aspect in AI and highlight some use cases?
Well, cognitive learning, I think that is an area of teaching. I believe if you could explain what particular area of cognitive learning do you mean, that would help.
We'll give him a chance to clarify his question a little bit, but that was the extent of the questions for today. It says how it applies in AI.
Okay, right. That's one of the most cutting-edge areas today, because here's what is assumed is that we have our sensors configured in such a way that they can change their behavior. Either they are under control of a certain entity, or they themselves are smart enough. And I have not seen any application of that sort as yet, but of course it's coming to this. You want your IoT to get smarter. So I believe that will be the second or third implementation stage after we're done with, first of all, putting the sensors in, automating this, and now we're applying AI, and that will be what is called the machine learning pipeline. It's very popular today with all of the existing data sources like retail databases, but not as developed yet with a IoT implementation.